The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the polished marble floors of the Sterling Rose, the most exclusive restaurant in Charleston's historic district. Women in designer gowns and men in tailored suits sipped vintage wines while soft jazz melodies floated through the air. But behind the velvet curtains and beneath the golden chandeliers, a different story was unfolding, one of courage, dignity, and the unbreakable bond of love. Sarah Mitchell moved gracefully between tables, her blonde hair pulled back in an elegant bun, her smile warm despite the aching in her feet. At 28, she had the kind of natural beauty that made guests do double takes, sparkling green eyes, a radiant smile, and an inner light that no amount of exhaustion could dim. But what most people did unknow was that beneath her crisp white blouse and black apron beat the heart of a woman who had survived more than most could imagine. 5 years ago, Sarah had been on track to become a doctor. Then her father's medical bills drained every penny. Her dreams were postponed, but never abandoned. She worked at the Sterling Rose not because she had to, but because she chose to, choosing strength over surrender, dignity over despair. Every table she served, every smile she gave, was a testament to her unshakable spirit. Tonight, the restaurant sparkled with an extra touch of magic. It was their 10th anniversary celebration, and the owner had spared no expense. Ice sculptures gleamed under spotlights, champagne flowed like rivers, and the air hummed with laughter and celebration. Sarah had worked a double shift, but she didn't mind. The tips tonight would help her finally enroll in that online medical course she'd been eyeing. What Sarah didn't know was that her husband, Commander Jake Mitchell, had just returned from a 6-month deployment. The Navy SEAL had landed 3 hours ago and had only one thing on his mind, surprising the love of his life. He'd texted her best friend, coordinated with the staff, and secured a quiet corner table where he could watch his wife work her magic, just as he'd dreamed of doing during those long desert nights thousands of miles away. Jake sat in the shadows, his broad shoulders filling out his civilian jacket, his steel-gray eyes following Sarah's every movement. To anyone else, he looked like another well-dressed patron. But beneath that calm exterior was a man forged in the world's toughest battles, a warrior who had learned that true strength was just about physical power, but about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. As he watched Sarah laugh with an elderly couple, carefully describing the menu to them with genuine warmth, his heart swelled. This was why he fought. Not just for his country, but for moments like these, for the right of good people to live without fear, to dream without limits. But then, everything changed. Marcus Blackwell, the assistant manager, strutted across the dining room like a peacock displaying his feathers. At 42, he wore expensive suits that couldn't hide his cheap character. His slicked back hair, gold rings, and practiced smile might have fooled some, but those who worked under him knew the truth. Marcus was a bully who hid behind his title, a small man who felt big only when making others feel small. For months, Marcus had been making Sarah's life difficult, accidentally giving her the worst sections, shorting her tips, making inappropriate comments that danced just on the edge of harassment. Sarah had reported him twice, but Marcus had friends in high places. The owners were never around to see his true colors. Tonight, he'd been drinking. Not enough for guests to notice, but enough to loosen the leash on his worst impulses. "Sarah," he hissed, grabbing her elbow as she passed with a tray of champagne flutes. "Table 12 is complaining about slow service. That's coming out of your tips." "Table 12 hasn't complained, Marcus," Sarah replied calmly, gently pulling her arm free. "I just checked on them 2 minutes ago." His face reddened. "Are you calling me a liar?" "I'm saying there might be a misunderstanding. You know what your problem is?" Marcus stepped closer, his voice dripping with venom. "You think you're better than this place? Better than me? It's walking around here like some kind of princess when you're just a Marcus. Please step back." Sarah's voice remained steady, but her heart was racing. Other staff members were watching now, uncertain whether to intervene. What happened next occurred in seconds. though for Sarah, it felt like slow motion. Marcus's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with bruising force. "We need to have a conversation about your attitude," he snarled, pulling her toward the hallway that led to the bathrooms and storage areas. Right now, Sarah tried to resist, but his grip was iron-tight. "Marcus, let go, move." He yanked her forward, and Sarah stumbled in her heels. Tears of anger and humiliation burned her eyes as she was dragged past shocked diners, past her coworkers who stood frozen in horror, past the point where dignity met danger. But Marcus Blackwell had made a critical error. In his alcohol-fueled rage, in his petty need to dominate and control, he had failed to notice the man rising from table 17. He didn't see the way that man's jaw clenched, or how his entire body became a coiled spring of controlled fury. He didn't know that he had just crossed a line that should never, ever be crossed. Jake Mitchell moved like a shadow, silent, swift, purposeful. "That's enough." The words were quiet, but they cut through the restaurant's ambient noise like a blade through silk. Marcus froze, his hand still gripping Sarah's wrist. He turned to see a man blocking his path, tall, powerfully built, with eyes that held the kind of calm that precedes a storm. "This doesn't concern you," Marcus sneered, though something in Jake's presence made his voice waver. "This is a staff matter. Go back to your let her go." Each word was a stone dropping into still water. Sarah's eyes widened as recognition flooded through her. "Jake!" Her voice broke on his name, surprise, relief, and love all tangled together. "Hi, sweetheart," Jake said softly, his eyes never leaving Marcus. "I'm sorry I'm late." Marcus's grip loosened slightly, confusion replacing arrogance. "Look, buddy, I don't know who you are, but I'm her husband." Jake's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. "And you have exactly 3 seconds to remove your hand from my wife before I remove it for you." The restaurant had gone silent. Every conversation stopped, every fork lowered. Even the jazz music seemed to fade into the background. Marcus made his second critical error of the night. He laughed. "I get it. The big hero, right? What are you going to do, tough guy?" "I'll have you arrested," for he never finished the sentence. Jake moved with a speed that defied his size, his hand shooting out to grip Marcus's wrist, with a pressure that made the assistant manager gasp. "You have the right to remain silent," Jake said quietly, his military training evident in every controlled movement. "I'd suggest you exercise it. You're breaking my arm." Marcus yelped, finally releasing Sarah. "No," Jake corrected calmly. "I'm applying exactly enough pressure to ensure you can't grab my wife again. There's a difference. I know precisely where that line is. They trained me very well." Sarah stepped back, and Jake's other arm immediately came around her, pulling her close while maintaining his grip on Marcus. She buried her face in his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of him, feeling the solid reality of his presence. "Someone call the owner," Jake announced to the room. "And the police. This man just committed assault in front of 50 witnesses." What followed was a blur of activity. The restaurant's owner, Victoria Sterling, arrived within 15 minutes, her face pale with shock. The police took statements from a dozen witnesses, all confirming what they'd seen. Marcus tried to lie, to spin the story, but in the age of smartphones, 3 different diners had captured video footage. But here's where the story takes its most beautiful turn. As Marcus was being escorted out in handcuffs, still sputtering threats and excuses, Sarah did something extraordinary. She walked over to him, looked him straight in the eye, and said, "I forgive you, Marcus. I hope you get help. I hope you become the kind of man who would be ashamed of who you were tonight." The restaurant erupted in applause. Victoria Sterling, tears streaming down her face, immediately offered Sarah a promotion to assistant manager with a salary 3 times what she'd been making. "I failed you," Victoria said. "I should have protected you from him. Let me make it right." But Sarah had other plans. "Thank you," she said gracefully. but I think it's time I went back to school. I have some dreams that have waited long enough." Jake's face lit up with pride. "Whatever you need," he whispered. "I'm here for it all." That night, as Jake and Sarah finally sat together in their modest apartment, she asked him the question that had been burning in her mind. "How did you stay so calm? I saw your hands, they were shaking." Jake looked down at his hands, hands that had held weapons, saved lives, and tonight had protected the woman he loved more than life itself. "I was terrified," he admitted. "Not of him, of what I might do if I let anger control me." The training isn't just about fighting, Sarah. It's about control. Knowing when to act, how to act, and when to show restraint. Real strength isn't about how much damage you can do. It's about how much damage you could do, but choose not to. Sarah took his hands in hers. "I spent so long thinking I needed to handle everything alone, to be strong by myself. But tonight taught me that accepting help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And having someone in your corner doesn't make you less independent. It makes you loved." 3 months later, Sarah enrolled in medical school. Jake retired from active duty to support her dreams, taking a position training new recruits. Marcus Blackwell lost his job, faced assault charges, and was ordered to complete anger management and substance abuse counseling. But the most beautiful part of the story, Marcus eventually got help. 2 years later, he sent Sarah a letter, a real handwritten apology with no excuses, no justifications. Just remorse and gratitude that she'd shown him mercy when he deserved none. Sarah framed that letter not as a trophy, but as a reminder that people can change, that forgiveness is powerful, and that kindness, even to those who hurt us, plants seeds we may never see grow, but that matter nonetheless. The video from that night went viral, not because of the confrontation, but because of what Sarah said after. "I forgive you." Those 3 words, spoken with genuine grace, started a conversation about workplace harassment, about bystander intervention, about the kind of strength that chooses compassion over vengeance. The Sterling Rose implemented new policies protecting staff from harassment. Victoria Sterling created a foundation providing scholarships to service industry workers pursuing education. Jake started a self-defense and de-escalation program for restaurant staff across Charleston. But for Jake and Sarah, the most important change was simpler. They learned to lean on each other, to share burdens, to understand that true partnership means being strong together, not just strong alone. Today, Dr. Sarah Mitchell works in a veterans hospital, treating the men and women who served alongside her husband. Jake coaches youth sports and teaches leadership seminars, sharing the lessons he learned in the service: discipline, honor, and the power of standing up for those who need protection. Their story reminds us that heroes don't always wear capes or uniforms. Sometimes they wear aprons and serve tables with dignity. Sometimes they know when to fight and when to show restraint. Sometimes they offer forgiveness when revenge would be easier. And always, always, they prove that love, real, committed, unconditional love, is the strongest force on earth. Stronger than anger, more powerful than hate, more enduring than fear. Because at the end of the day, we're not measured by how hard we can hit, but by how gracefully we can stand, how fiercely we can love, and how completely we can forgive. That's the real story of the night a manager made the worst mistake of his life, and everyone learned what true strength really means.